Okay, this is recording our third session for the AGON Institute of Sports Ministry for Barclay College, Master of Sports Outreach. This is the overview of competition. Hello and welcome back to this AGON Institute of Sports Ministry video series on the Theology of Competition in Sport. And in specific, we're producing this for Barclay College for the Master of Arts in Sports Outreach. For you that are taking this as a credentialed course, meaning you're going to get a degree for it, you're going to have to be taking your notes. They need to be of exam quality, remember. And if you're taking it for certification or just for your own pleasure, obviously you can take whatever notes you'd like. But there is an accompanying PowerPoint presentation that goes along with this that you would want to be filling in blanks and adding your own bits of note-taking, again, of exam quality. It is a true joy to be able to do this for Barclay. It's a true joy to be doing this in partnership with CSRM and Uncharted Waters, who have created the AGON Institute. The previous two sessions that we've had in this course have addressed a couple of the foundational parts of helping us to know how to create a theology of competition in sport. Proper biblical interpretation, how do we interpret the Bible that can get us to theological foundations, and also an overview of theology. What does it really mean to create a theology? A theology is a study of God, and so we're studying God in relationship to competition and sport. This session is going to entail an overview of competition and lead us in a little bit into sport. So you're going to have to understand that the overall goal of the course is to help you determine theological foundations that will lead you to know how to do ministry, how to have ethical competitions in your sports outreach, and on it goes. If you go to your second slide in your presentation, you will see a graph there. Arthur F. Holmes discusses three cautions when it comes to and in regard to sport, as expressed as he looked at Thomas Aquinas. All of these are what Aquinas and then obviously Holmes thinks that Christians should follow. Here's the first one. I'm going to read it. First, do not take pleasure in indecent or injurious play. Second, do not lose your mental or emotional balance and self-control. And the third thing that comes from Aquinas through Arthur Holmes is to not play in ways ill-fitting either the hour, ill-fitting of the hour, or of the man. Play should have positive, moral, and other consequences. Well, I think we would agree with all those things, but now the particulars kind of get in the way, don't they? Competition and sport, by this graph on your chart there, are not the same. Most people equate competition and sport as being the same, but they're not. This shows that competition is the overarching concept, and sport is one of many expressions of competition. Business is one, politics is one, finance is one. Moving to the next chart, you're going to see what I've developed as the competition grid. And you're going to see that it moves from the lower left-hand corner, playful games, up into sporting competitions. There's sequential, there's simultaneous, and then there's also a synchronistic way of looking at that. So playful games are just kids in a big sandbox at the beach. They're just playing games, building castles and what have. Sequential sports would be things like jumping, throwing, curling, where one participant or one team does something and then the next person or team does the exact same thing. So somebody runs down the track and does a long jump. or runs down the track and does a high jump, or they throw a javelin or a discus. These are sequential, and the only thing that might come into play with another participant is how far or how quick or how long that other participant had just done. But that participant doesn't get in the way of the person doing their thing, so to speak. Now, the simultaneous would be things like swimming or racing, foot racing, where there's no impediment necessarily. They're swimming in laps or lanes right beside each other, or running in lanes right next to each other. But they're doing it at the same time. They might do it in heats, and the winners of the heats then compete. But again, they're not necessarily impeding the other person. Curling is a little bit of both, where one goes sequentially and then the next rock is thrown, and it could be impeding or knocking the rock off the ice. But you get a sense that where it's sequential as opposed to simultaneous. And then the synchronized is where they're both on the field or on the pitch or on the court at the same time, and one has the ball. On most sports, that's the offensive team, and the other team is now defending against that team that has the ball. So sequentially, one team has the ball, one after the other, but simultaneously they are competing for that ball or competing for where that ball goes at the same time, and it's kind of a synchronized approach to both. So you see that in sequential, simultaneous, and team-oriented, synchronized competitions. Then there's what I call challenges. These would be things like, they're called sports, but they're things like hunting, fishing, motorsports. And you can begin to see how, while there may need to be a little bit of strength or a little bit of coordination or a little bit of endurance, it's not necessarily at the same level as some of these other sports. And then the other is what we've said already: business, politics, marriage. Yes, I competed for my wife. I'm glad I won that competition. All right, so this is the competition grid. And when you see on the competition grid on your fourth slide, you'll see athletics on the upper left-hand side, and you see on the lower right-hand side activities. And basically what this means is that competition that includes athletics are more what we would call sport, and competition that are more activities are non-sport, so to speak. But they're all competitions. And now I'm introducing to you on your sixth slide the progressive intensity level of competition. What this means, PIL, progressive intensity level of competition, is that these kinds of competitions start with just play. Right now I'm blessed to have 3 grandsons between the ages of almost 3 to almost 4. And they're just playing with all kinds of things in all kinds of ways. There's not any real competition there. Then they move to playful games. Now, that would be where they're playing, but they're on the beach, and they're who can fill up the bucket the quickest, or who can build the best sandcastle. A little bit of competition has been introduced. And then there are games, and they come back and they're just starting to play games. And these are table games or other kinds of games. And even more competition elements are introduced into that. A kick the can game is a game that is played in our area of the world, and it's kind of a hide and seek and a base that's free, and they play this game, and there's more competition to that. And then we move to athletics. These are the individual contests that we talked about, the running, the jumping, the throwing, the usually one-on-one or one after the other. And then when we move to what I call sport, this is where the combination of games and athletics pit teams and individuals against each other. Athletics is how I've defined that. And sport now combines games and athletics together. So you go from play to playful games to athletics and sport. And now you can have all those sports being played, but varsity, at least in the Western culture, has to do with someone who is playing for a very organized team. In our setting, a varsity would be at a scholastic or high school level, maybe a middle school level, and then also into a collegiate level, an intercollegiate situation. And these are highly organized, highly officiated, highly coached, highly participated in, usually with a lot of fans, and it takes it to a whole nother level. And then the last level is pro. This would include all of the varsity level that we have on the PIL,